Hello and good morning. Welcome to the Habit Architect. I'm really excited about today's guest. May have actually seen an episode he was on before, so he's a repeat offender. We're glad to have him back. And the subject we're going to talk about today is really change management. Is the title of is what we're going to talk a lot about. But why are we talking about that? Because AI is impacting all of our lives. It may be in your job, you may be using it personally. There's a lot of reasons why AI is impacting the way that we behave these days. And so with that becomes, how do we change? How do we change ourselves, our habits that we associate with? Can we change? Can we remodel our lifestyle around this new technology and what it does? And particularly in the job. And Tony's really an expert at organizational change. And so that's why we're going to talk more about kind of in your job, but we'll hit some of the things that are individual as well. But as you know, a lot of people use AI now, Gen AI, to write email messages or posts or whatever they may do, and we're trusting that. But are we at the point where we're able to trust it to actually make decisions in our job? And that's where change management is either going to make or break companies' deployments of AI, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm glad to welcome back on the show Tony as he comes into the room. Tony has worked in consulting for several years, Accenture, Pega, many different companies, and he's going to tie that experience back into this conversation. So, Tony, welcome again. Good to see you.
Thanks, Michael. Nice to be here. It's good to be on the show again.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. And we've got a different topic than we did the last time, but it's really everywhere, right? I mean, AI is everywhere, which means change for everybody. And so I'm looking forward to talking about it in the context of individuals and teams. So
Absolutely. No,
so
looking.
why don't you? I don't know if I did a good introduction of you. Why don't you do a reintroduction? I said Accenture and Pega and Rulesware, but I don't know if I really hit what you did.
Yeah, so this is great. So thanks, Cups. I mean, I think you did a great introduction. Just kind of filling in some additional stuff. So my background is really started off in education, and then I did the crazy move into consulting, working for Anderson, Accenture for several years. And that's really where I really specialized in change management for a lot of industries, a lot of companies, over that period of time. I then went into moved over to IBM, and then after IBM, I then moved over to Pega, where I was doing some work for about 18 years. And then just most recently, I've been with Rulesware for the last 2.5 years, as the EVP of sales and customer success, and really enjoying it. And this topic is, it's, even though like I said, I'm really passionate about change management, but it's not a topic that, is really kind of prevalent, right? I mean, it's more like IT, and everyone goes to IT for solving things, but this AI conundrum, as I'll call it,
Yeah.
is playing a lot of havoc right now on like what to do and trust and where do I go. There's so much stuff going on within the world right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I like that. I'm looking forward to getting into the session. I just want to mention, you'll see it come across the bottom of the screen. Tony's LinkedIn. Do connect with him. He's a great follow. So do connect with him and follow his LinkedIn. And also, if you have any questions, if you're on YouTube, you can type it in there. If you're on LinkedIn, please do interact with us. We'd like to know where you're from. And if you have a question for Tony, please add that to the chats. So, Tony, I recently read a study. I'm sure everybody read it. MIT came out and said a 94%, some crazy number like that, of Gen AI projects failed, right? And so if you look at that by sheer numbers, that's a colossal disaster. It means a lot of people in corporate America were doing things that didn't turn into productive things, which could impact GDP and a lot of things. But I don't know if I would agree with the number, because I don't really know that it was measured. Because where we have helped a lot of people is back office, where AI is doing something separately and then it delivers results. But Gen AI is a little different. That's when people get involved, and I'm guessing that's kind of where change management comes into it. But why do you think so many are viewed as failures?
I would actually kind of agree with you on your kind of message that you don't agree with it, because I don't know. I love to actually kind of dig into the MIT study a little bit more to understand why that's actually so common, per that study and the report. In general, I think I kind of go back and let's take the Gen AI and take change management out of it. But
Yeah.
I think in general, technology implementations, a lot of them fail. And we've talked about this in the past. A lot of them fail because they're not looking at a holistic kind of approach. But now you bring in AI into that, and you look at the Gen AI projects as that MIT study talks about, and saying that except for about 6% they fail. So why is it they're failing? I actually would actually put a correlation, between IT, Gen AI, and change management as the reason of probably the reason for the study, and probably the reason of why some of these failures are is because they're looking at it as a typical project, right? Or they're looking at it and they're not implementing change management, as part of it. And as you and I were talking just before this call, being in change management, like I said, I've been in this industry for like 30 plus years, is, change management was always the stepchild when it comes to IT development, right? It's always the technology, you put the technology and then you put the process in, but you forget about the people, right? And change management is all around, the people. So, it's really, as far as like they're not really addressing, when you look at the Gen AI type of projects or
Mhm.
AI projects, there's probably a lot of companies are not looking at it the right way. And I would
Yeah.
say the first thing is you need to come up with a strategy, right? Any company that's looking at AI needs to have a strategy. And with that strategy, it has to have change management, as part of that. So, the thing is, traditional change management in the past was all about process and tools, getting
Right.
people from point A to point B. With AI, it's different, right? So
Yeah.
we're talking about continuous change, not a one-time transformation of an implementation, right?
Yeah.
So, even when technology is flawless, there's still some challenges in helping your people. And if you don't have change management as part of it, you're going to have some challenges. So,
Yes.
the,
Oh,
so
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just. Could you explain what change management technically is to a person? Like the reason you said something that kind of struck something in me that said, when you think about IT rollouts, let's say you're getting a new CRM or something like that, and they just tell you it's because it's going to make you more productive. They don't really explain the rest of it. Is Can you take that example maybe and say what is change management in that context? Is it showing people how to use the technology, or is it something bigger?
it's that and bigger, right? So it's change management is, and I kind of go back to, I'm a prodigy of kind of the back in the 80s and 90s. So, I kind of look at the old kind of people, process, and technology, right? So, everyone knows technology, getting the technology out there. The processes is defining your processes, whether it's, through a BPM tool or, any other kind of tool
Yeah.
that's out there to define your processes. But then, the people aspect is, how do you then, so you look at change management, it's like, how do you actually, address the people? How do you get your people ready, for that change, as kind of we talked about just a few minutes ago. So it's everything from, making sure that they're skilled up, making sure that, the communication is out there. A lot of IT projects, and I would say AI projects, fail because, the leadership is not spending the time to make sure that the people understand why they're doing this strategy,
Mm.
how it's actually going to impact them, right? And that really is kind of the core of change management, is really around making sure that the people are engaged, informed, and aligned with what that change is going to happen. And again, change can be anything from a technology, a process, or AI coming into the world, right?
Yeah.
So all
Yeah.
that plays into what change management is. There's everything from a communication, training, stakeholder alignment. There's a bunch of aspects that fit under the umbrella of change management,
Yeah.
but in the center, it's all around the people.
Yeah. Yeah. And so with that in mind, I mean, I was going to ask you, and you kind of talked about some reasons why projects and big transformations derail, but maybe let's take that a little further. So I mean, it sounds like in a smaller company, communication is relatively easy, right? But in the large organizations, you just think it's the technology so detached from that change effort.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it is from an aspect of, so let me kind of take a step back. Is from my perspective, experience in doing IT work and so on, is, a lot of things, whether it's AI or just tech in general, right? They don't fail, right? Software is actually really good. All right. So I mean, I think that you put, there's tons of different technologies out there in softwares, right? And from looking at implementations, even kind of AI implementations, is that, you're not going to have, it's not the tech that fails. It's not necessarily the process that
Yeah.
fails. What fails is that people are not embracing it. They're not leveraging it, right? And, I got tons of different examples from, experiences in different industries, from financial services, healthcare, insurance,
Yeah.
comms, and so on, is that they all fail because, they're not really embracing change management. They're not talking to the people, as I kind of mentioned about
Yeah.
earlier. So it's a challenge. I think that AI is actually bringing it even more important. I'm hoping that people are going to embrace change management more, now that, AI is really disrupting stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think you made me have an aha moment just then, because a few days ago or a week ago, I don't remember when, I was having issues with my insurance, and they said go to the portal and do something, and I couldn't get it to work. And I finally called them and said, your portal's not working. And they said, no, you need to click there, and then it worked just fine. So it really wasn't, the portal wasn't working. It just wasn't working the way I wanted it to work. So it was kind of, and we probably all had those aha moments. Call tech support, and they go, no, just click that button instead, and oh, there it works. So change management is it at a scale is making sure that everybody's clicking the right button, but also understand why they're clicking it that way and stuff like that. So, can you give us a good example of maybe a large company that implemented with change management front and center, and how that changed things with AI?
So a lot of that, sure, absolutely. I give you several different examples, but one example is, insurance company. I'm not going to give names out there.
Yeah,
So, from my perspective, is there was this insurance company that rolled out AI to help underwriters access claims faster, right? And I think in insurance, AI is under leveraged and underutilized. You think about, and as I said, insurance is one of my background topics, and I can talk about it a long time. But the thing is, like in underwriting, underwriters are sifting and they're collecting a lot of information, right? They're getting a lot of forms, faxes, emails, a lot of documents. If you're in workers' compensation, you're having stacks of documents that you have to review, right? So where AI is actually, great, is AI can actually sift through all the information, summarize it, and pull it together. But you
mhm,
have to actually have that trust in there. And in order for the model to work and leverage AI, you have to make sure that the people understand how it's going to benefit them, why we're doing this, and how it's going to save them time. Employees distrust as far as new technologies, right? And we always talk about change. People are afraid of change, and employees are all the same way. Customers are the same way. So, in this situation, from this insurance company with underwriters, is that they were left waiting, the staff, to choose not to use it. So the thing is, they rolled out this big strategy and so on. And what did the employees do? The employees then went back to their old way of doing things, and they
yeah,
weren't embracing it, and they were leveraging the same thing. I kind of look back as, even in, some healthcare and some financial services examples, is that, they put in all this different technology and everything, but they still have their post-it notes. Even though they have some buttons on the screen, they
yeah.
still back to their post-it notes and, use the old system, which we got to get companies to make sure they're turning off their old systems so that they don't have that option. But you got to have the best training, which is
Yeah.
change management, and they're on as well.
So is that putting people first, when you think about a transformation?
It is putting people first, and I think that what AI is, it's going to have to focus on that, right? So many, even in, in my job right now in our company, we do consulting, in financial services, insurance, and in healthcare. The thing is, across those industries, is that, like, everyone thinks that technology is the savior, right? Well, let's invest in technology, and they have it all wrong, right? Technology is only as good as the people that you have,
Yeah.
even a small set of people. If you don't have your people focused and understanding and trained and skilled up and involved in kind of that change in that strategy, then you're going to actually have a lot of problems. So I definitely encourage everyone that's listening, if you don't have a change management practice, or you don't have someone on your team
Yeah.
that is, kind of focused on the people, you really should.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good advice. So let's turn this on the leaders, maybe, because you said something there, that you said, people go, oh, if we get this new technology in there, we're going to be more productive, right? Or we're going to see better returns on whatever. So can you kind of get it from a perspective of a leadership, when you're thinking about implementing an AI project, Gen AI, whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of walk us through what they should be thinking about and priorities there.
Well, and what I would actually kind of turn that around and I would actually say is to start is you need to understand kind of the gotchas, right? And I think that
Mm.
you need to understand what is preventing kind of
Yeah,
AI, what's preventing kind of projects from being successful and so on is understanding kind of the pitfalls that companies actually run into. So, I think probably four common pitfalls that I've seen and are pretty common. I think that everyone listening will probably agree on this is that over promising, right? Over promising results of selling realistic expectations, right?
yeah,
So what
yeah,
does that really mean? So it's like you have to get, if an executive is coming in saying, oh, it's the newest, the latest, we got to put AI and everything else without thinking through how it's going to affect the people and so on, and
yeah,
over promising the benefits of it, and oh, we're going to grow, your job is going to be much easier and so on. You have to be honest with it. You have to do your due diligence and looking at it. You can't overpromise. You have to actually come up with statements like, we're investigating, we're looking at, we want you to be a part of those type of things, right? The other aspect, another one is ignoring middle management. And, controversial, I know a lot of companies are letting go of their middle management. And it's a
yeah,
shame because middle management is the most important aspect because they are the key from the executives down to the actual people who do the work, right? So, they're the bridge between leadership and staff. And, ignoring them or not having them involved in having them part of your change management communication around AI is going to be a big mistake. The third one is not addressing kind of the biases of AI tools, right?
right.
Uh, which erodes the trust, right? So, you have to, like I said, you Google, you look at a bunch of things, and you're going to see a bunch of things around AI, and even your MIT study that you kind of reference is like it gives that like bad note about AI, But the thing is, people have biases, right? People are afraid of that change. People are afraid of the new things, the new technology. So you have to address those biases with people. And then the last one is, probably the most common is treating AI adoption just like any IT project. Like an IT project instead of an enterprise wide cultural shift. Because if you look at AI and your AI strategy as just a project and not looking at enterprise shift, within your company, again, we talked about the AI strategy. If you don't look at it that way, you're going to have some challenges, right? You have to make sure that your employees, the leadership, everyone in the company has that kind of mindset that it is an enterprise wide cultural shift and we're adopting this and we want you to be a part of it.
Yeah. So those four gotchas are great. It was overpromising, ignoring the middle management layer, addressing the biases, and then not treating it just as a technology rollout. So let's say that a company decides to skip one of those. I mean, what's the outcome? Is it what we hear from MIT then?
Yeah, I do think, and again, I'm going to go back to kind of the topic, right? So, technology is expensive, even AI tools and so on, and creating a strategy
Mhm.
is tool, right? So, we see a lot of kind of what we call shadow resistance, where employees are quietly
Uh,
biased and so on. But, change management, if you don't actually, incorporate change management into it, as I've been kind of preaching, you know, you're going to have failures. And I would say that MIT study, and if I dig into it, and I will, I actually think that the MIT study is probably maybe a little bit more accurate. And I would say the reason why is because they're not addressing the people, right? They're not having kind of change management as part of it.
yeah, and it's how the people feel it's being done to them instead of with them, or something. Maybe that's right. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, Cups, as far as like, there's a lot of people out there as far as, and I talk to my friends. I'm sure you talk to your friends
Yeah.
and other companies and so on. The one common comment I hear all the time is, is AI gonna remove my job? Right? Am I gonna have a job? Right?
Yeah.
Are they gonna actually do that? And the thing is, it could, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, again, it needs to be put onto the person to develop the skills. I actually think there's AI is going to help with individuals because I think that in general a lot of people do very mundane tasks, and it's
Right.
those mundane tasks that are low cost and so on that could be automated, right? But
Yeah.
really the value is going to be those individuals that bring kind of strategic thinking and, are skilled up in very specific areas that AI can't actually handle and can't do.
Yeah.
So when you think about it, you've heard this before, is getting the right task to the right person with the right skills, right? So I think that that's where AI kind of helps with this in companies, is
Yeah.
it takes those mundane, very large, menial kind of tasks, and actually then having AI do it so that, all the important stuff is getting to the right people with the right skills.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. And what did you, that, I love the term you use, shadow something, shadow management, shadow something.
Shadow resistance.
Shadow resist. I love that. That says a lot about what can be happening in an organization when change is afoot, right? So, okay, so we've talked about what could go wrong, right? There's a lot of things that if you don't get certain your plan right, it could go wrong. But what does it look like when a leadership team or a project team gets it right?
Yeah, when a project team gets it right and kind of embraces kind of change management and defines the strategy and looks at it, I think you're going to have a better, well-oiled machine. I think that, when you're communicating with your employees, when you're getting them involved, I really advocate, within my company, within the previous companies I worked for, and clients that I've consulted for, is, getting, individuals involved. But before you start a project, you need to get, individuals from different organizations, from your lowest, to your kind of your senior management and middle management involved with it, right? When you get that all together and you get inputs into it, I think that you can really get, a very successful implementation with that strategy. So what it looks like, is adopting AI becomes routine, right? It becomes, everyone's embracing it. Everyone understands why we're doing it. And, whether it's tied to a technology or just that strategy, I think that what you're going to see is an organization that is actually, moving and kind of evolving, and instead of actually staying in the dark ages, right? And I think that there's too many
Yeah.
companies that are in the dark age, and they've created so many, tech debt with technologies, process debt with so many processes, and they're not really embracing it because they don't have a strategy around it, and they don't have change management where they're pulling people in to understand what needs to be done.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was thinking about it while you were talking about that. And if you think about the way big firms are rolling out AI, they start with a POC or in a lab or something. So it's kind of this clandestine kind of over here where the IT guys are doing it, and then they have success in the lab, and they go, oh, well, let's
Yeah.
just roll it out, and they probably skip
They
all those
they
steps,
skip
right?
all
And
those steps, right? You and I many.
yeah, because they're excited about what it did in the lab, yeah. So that's a great way of thinking about it. So, all right, so this is a podcast about habit building and habit formation. So, I'm wondering if you could tell us kind of the habits of success on this
Yeah,
topic.
so beyond best practices, as we've kind of talked about, and about what you need to do, success really depends on habits, as you talked about. So I think that there's probably around 7 different habits that I'll just kind of end with and kind of really stress is that you need to have. Is one is, and probably the first one is the habit of curiosity, right? And that's not just your leadership, but that's the employees in there, right? So you need to have that curiosity, encouraging people to ask, how AI can help me, be better, right? Be more efficient. Instead of fearing what it might replace me, you look at how I can embrace it to actually make my job faster, make me more, efficient in the work that I'm doing, whatever that work is, right? The next one is kind of the habit of transparency, right? We talked about this a little bit, is that transparency is so really important. I think that, when you have mistrust, when you have a lot of challenges in your employees, and if you're, I would kind of correlate this from an HR standpoint, is that if you have a lot of your retention is really low, because
Mm,
people are leaving all the time, a lot of it is actually probably due to that transparency. Be clear about what AI is going to do. Be clear in your strategy about how you're using AI, right? And that it's going to, help you. It's not going to, it's going to develop additional skills for you. It's not going to replace you, right? Um, I think the next one is the habit of experimentation. So, test and learn, embrace it, figure out what works. The thing is, everyone feels like you start down this process, and I get things are expensive, but you have to make sure that you're building into your project plan, some retrospects, right? Where you're actually stepping back and saying, hey, is this actually going the way that we want it to go, right? Are we getting the results, right? Are the people embracing this, or do we need to kind of change that? And that kind of goes along with
Yeah.
inclusiveness, a habit of inclusiveness, right? Getting involved,
Yeah.
cross-functional teams, that IT, the business, the frontline, the operations, getting them involved in kind of that strategy. And then, I'll just say continuous learning is probably one of the key thing
Yeah.
is that you have technology is changing. I am constantly learning things every single day. On
Yeah.
the web and what's coming out. There's so much new things. So that continuous learning is really so important from a standpoint. And then the last one I'll say is
Yeah.
the feedback. Keep channels open to employees. Let them actually give you the feedback, and making sure that
Yeah.
you're asking. Create that communication plan. Create that avenue that people are allowed to feel comfortable asking a question, whether it's anonymous or in person. You need to create those channels where people and your employees can actually give you that feedback in a non-threatening kind of way.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting because I think those are great habit discussions, and many of them we talked about before, even on individual things. Continuous learning is something we should all be doing, and with AI, it becomes even more powerful because you can get summaries of things and stuff like that. So you do that, and then just feedback and experimentation is an interesting one. I think that people overlook even in their personal lives, right? Because we get set. You might hear this a lot with somebody that they're in a rut, right? Well, if they just tried some experimentation, they may not like what they try, but then they can go on and try something else. So I think those are great habits of advice, not only for organizations rolling out AI, but just as us as individuals. Let's think about what is our role in this AI transformation in your job, in your home, in your whatever it is that
I
we do.
agree. Those habits apply to your everyday life, right? Whether it's AI,
Yeah.
process implementation, whatever you do in your job, I think that those habits can actually apply to anyone, doing anything, out there.
Yeah. All right. One last thought on that, and then I've got two questions to ask you. But any last thoughts just to bring home the change management and
Yeah,
AI
I,
topic?
I think that the last thing I would say in kind of closing is on this is AI success equals technology plus people. Without change management, AI is like an engine without fuel. It's a perfect kind of an analogy and example, right? So
Yeah.
you got this engine that's going and so on, but it's not going to go without the fuel. It's kind of the same thing is that if you don't have, when you're applying AI into your organization, if you don't actually have change management in it, you're not going to go very far, right? You're going to stop. You're not going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. That's a great final thought. So my two things that I've been started asking everybody on the podcast. We weren't doing this when your first show that you did with us. So the first one is, what is a non-negotiable habit that Tony does every day?
I'm not is I would think continuous learning, right? It's one of those things is continuous learning. Where is that I outside of taking care of my own health and so on and going to the gym, the first thing I do is I spend probably a good, hour, early in the morning going through the web and searching and understanding and seeing what's out there, see what other businesses are doing. Read the business journals and the Wall Street journals and understand as far as like what's out there, what's some of the different trends. So I think continuous learning is you have to have that passion for continuous learning. If you're not learning,
Yeah.
if you're not putting yourself to learn more, then you're actually going to be left behind.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good one. And then the other one is it's less of a question, but maybe a position statement because I've been playing with this concept that tomorrow is more important than yesterday.
Okay?
Right. And somebody took exception to that and they said, oh, yesterday's important too. It absolutely is. But tomorrow is more important than yesterday. So what would your feeling be on
I
that
think it depends
statement?
on the context, right? So it
Okay.
really depends on the context of that. I think that yesterday is really important to understand because I think history does repeat itself, and I think you have to learn from the past. But I
Yep.
think that you can't dwell on the past. So I do think that there's truth in there is that tomorrow is more important than yesterday because you have to start thinking about the future. You have to think about taking all that history and all that knowledge from your past, which is yesterday, and how to apply it into tomorrow. And what are the
Yeah.
learnings? What are the things that you're going to apply? And how you're actually going to change as an individual, as an employee, as a husband, as a wife, as a child, as whatever, you need to kind of think about
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I like about the statement for me personally is that it's what we do today that shapes tomorrow, and that could be learning from the past, just like you said there. So it's awesome. I really appreciate you spending some time with us. Tell them people about Rulesware real quick, just so we can wrap up with that because we covered it. But
Yeah, so Rulesware is a consulting company. We focus on really from a Pega technology standpoint, but we also, are very partnered with ActiveOps, which does AI, from a workforce management and operations standpoint. We're also a GCP partner. We are a specialized partner that is, we have our nearshore offices in Latin America, so central time zone for everyone in the United States. We really kind of specialize in helping transformation, everything from, AI, change management, but really around, what our specialty is, kind of our slogan is start smarter, scale faster. And from that aspect, and we've talked about the last kind of podcast around data, is leveraging your data and AI to actually then drive improvements and faster implementations, through scaling faster to actually get the results. So, we are a company that's really kind of focused on, on the results, on your outcomes as a business and in driving to make you successful. We will actually work with you instead of against you. And we look
yeah.
forward to working with other partners or other clients out there.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Tony, for joining us, and for everybody watching. Appreciate the time again. This was a great topic. It's in our lives everywhere. Change management is happening. Change is happening, no matter whether you're on board with it or not. Things are happening very fast. The other thing I'd mention is I was noticing leaves starting to change colors, cooler air in the mornings, things like that. And I just urge everybody to start thinking about their hierarchy of values. And if you've followed the Habit Architect and Time Bandit, you know that what I'm talking about. But get in front of that. So instead of a New Year's resolution on January 1 that you just thought of on December 31st, start thinking about what we can do tomorrow, today and tomorrow to change where we want to be. And change management is one of those things that you need to think about. Continuous learning, the things we talked about, or Tony talked about, are spot on with that. So thanks, everyone. Be sure to go check out timebandit.io, get the book, all that good stuff. And we appreciate everybody here, and we'll see you next